Welcome back to Hardball. This week, a bipartisan Minnesota appeals court ruled Al Franken the winner in the never-ending Minnesota Senate race. Today, a new development in the contest between Franken and Norm Coleman. The Democratic National Committee says it's airing a new radio ad in the Twin Cities calling on Norm Coleman to concede. Take a listen.
Franken won the election in November, he won the recount, and now he's won a legal challenge filed by Norm Coleman. Yet Coleman and national Republicans who want to thwart the will of the voters have vowed to file more appeals and hopeless legal challenges that will only result in more delay. Enough is enough.
But will pressure from the Democratic Party push Coleman to drop his legal challenges? Howard Dean is the former chairman of the Democratic National Committee, and Ron Christie is a Republican strategist. Ron, what do you figure Norm Coleman does not understand about the phrase, "you lose"?
Well, it's not over yet, and I put my lawyer hat on and say that Senator Coleman has alleged that there are certain irregularities that are in place that are not allowing all the ballots to be counted. And I think he has had his day in court at the appeals level, and I think he's going to have his day in court at the Supreme Court level. Only then, I think, can the serious calls come from those who say that he's been dragging this on for too long to have him remove himself from the race. But again, I think it's only fair, Mike, it's only fair, given that the United States is based on a rule of law and we have equal protection under the law, that he's allowed to exhaust all of his legal remedies before people say that it's time for him to pack it in.
Were you referring to the state Supreme Court or the United States Supreme Court?
The state Supreme Court.
Okay, thank you. Governor Dean, you think we'll still be talking about this in June, July, August? I mean, this is, it just goes on.
You might be.
Really? You think so?
It's a real problem. Yeah, it's a problem. I mean, you know, he could appeal to the Supreme Court. Then he's talking about appealing to the federal courts. My guess is that voters in Minnesota see this as a stalling tactic. And I think the DNC has been really smart because the legal niceties aside, we've gone through a lot of legal niceties since the election day. The people of Minnesota don't have a senator that they ought to have. And what the DNC is doing is tagging all the Republican Party with this. And it's a very smart thing to do politically, because I think that's how Minnesotans are going to see it. Republicans are saying no in Washington, and the Republican ex-senator is saying no in Minnesota, and it's hurting average voters. And I think that's a bad place for the Republicans to be.
Hey, Ron, you get the sense from people who are not as deeply immersed in politics as you are that this whole thing might be a stalling tactic to prevent the Democrats getting to the number 59 in the United States Senate.
Well, I've heard that, and I know Senator Coleman, and I know that's not his strategy here. I think what he's trying to say is that he wants to make sure that all the votes are counted. And I think it's a matter of fundamental fairness. Obviously, if he does not have his day in court and he does not prevail in the Supreme Court in Minnesota, I think there are going to be a lot of people also in the Republican Party who say, are we dragging this out for political advantage? But again, I think fundamental fairness dictates that we allow him to present his evidence, to have his say before the Supreme Court, and then if there are not any procedures in place that the Supreme Court determines that it would be proper for him to continue, then I think that the chorus will grow louder for him to pull out. But we haven't reached that point yet, Mike. And again, Senator Coleman is entitled to his day in court.
I got it. So Ron, if the Minnesota Supreme Court, if the state Supreme Court says, you know, out of here, get out of here, go home, to Senator Coleman, would you too go along with that? Would you say enough's enough?
I'd want to see what their opinion is. I would want to see how they couched it as a matter of law.
If their opinion is, you know, it's over, you lost, would you, as a Republican, be in favor of saying to Senator Coleman, it's time to end this, it's time to leave this?
I'm a lawyer. I'd want to read the opinion and see how they based it. Was it based on a matter of law, or was it based on a matter of fact? If there's a factual dispute, that's one thing. But if there's a legal remedy that allows Senator Coleman to pursue the case, then I'd want to read it. But I'm not going to sit here and judge and prejudge the case until we see what the Supreme Court has to say.
Governor, thankfully, you're a doctor, Governor, so save me from the lawyers.
That's actually true. Not that I have anything against lawyers, of course, but
of course not. We're good, though.
But the fact of the matter is, this is a huge political problem for the Republican Party, and the Democrats realize that, and that's exactly what they're doing when they put up these radio ads. This looks like more Republican obstructionism. And again, this has been going on for almost 6 months since the election. The people of Minnesota deserve a second senator. The people of Minnesota know that. And I think every day that this goes on from now on, it's going to be harder for any Republican to succeed in Minnesota.
Ron, off of what the governor just said, Texas Senator John Cornyn, the NRSC chairman, he sent out a fundraising email Tuesday, and here's part of it. It's frankly shocking that many of the same Democrats who so loudly decried voter disenfranchisement during the Florida recount in 2000 have so quickly run away from that principle when it no longer fits their political agenda. Nonetheless, Republicans and the NRSC in particular remain committed to a full and fair resolution of this election contest and stand firmly behind Senator Norm Coleman. Now, Ron, I know where you're coming from on the rule of law. We've heard that. But this country installed a president of the United States in 2000 after 6 weeks down there in Florida with the Florida Supreme Court and then the United States Supreme Court. This has now gone on for 6 months. Now, I don't know about people in the rest of the country, but I think people in Minnesota are basically throwing up their hands and saying, you know, what is the deal here? You're just stalling this thing. The other guy won. Norm Coleman lost. Do you not agree with that?
No, I don't agree with that. You're talking about an election where over 3 million ballots were cast. The number we're talking about, that the lead that Al Franken has, is 312. I think fundamental fairness dictates that when over 3 million people go to the polls and have had the opportunity to cast the lever and have such a narrow, razor-thin margin of 312 votes,
okay,
I think we need to determine whether or not those absentee ballots should be counted and whether or not this is the final result.
Okay. Governor Dean, Dr. Dean, quick last thought.
This could be a national pattern. We've got a very close election, a special election in District 20 in New York. The Republicans went into court yesterday to try to put off the count on that one. I think it's awfully close. We don't know who won that one yet. But this looks like a national attempt by the Republicans to keep people out of office if they have a D after their name. I think the best way to solve these things is get these people in office when the vote is settled. And the vote has been settled in Minnesota.
Governor Dean.
Of course.
Oh, go ahead.
And of course, Mike, the Democrats want all the votes counted except for when it comes out to be politically advantageous for them. Then they want to stop the process.
All the votes counted.
All the votes haven't been counted.
Including the votes in Florida, which weren't counted because of the Supreme Court.
And of course,
but that's 8 years ago.
And of course, the governor knows that all the votes were counted. In fact, the margin went higher for President Bush. But
gotta go.
Yes, it was.
Governor Dean, Ron Christie, thanks very much. Up next, so what...